It's Sunday, October 16th, 2022. It's the 19th Sunday after Pentecost. Just for those that have a different, holiday schedule, a different calendar system that might not be operating financially on a Jason Bourne system of some sorts, which is how the financial system in New York seems to run off of. They put up the Jason DJ FM AMJ fundamentals on their whatever. So I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking to myself out loud, and I'm like, just so I'm seeing straight, I'm looking at Magellan, and then I'm trying to gain my bearings, and I'm like thinking by myself quietly about many different things for which I know I'm out of control. I know I'm not the one in control, but I'm trying to gain control of some form of reality for which I've been in. Now, when I looked on the when I looked on the Magellan Strait, they said there were 5 something at pleading with fifth. They mentioned Santiago. They mentioned San Antonio and Conception, at immaculate birth between myself and Alexander James. He's one of my immaculates. I don't know why Magellan's Strait shooter is saying it's Santiago, San Antonio, and Concepcion. And I don't know who the 2 others are involved. I don't know if that's a 76 or 75. I'm just sitting 78 on this. Inch by inch, trying to gain my bearings of so I'm watching this edition of Sunday Morning on the 19th Sunday after Pentecost, for those that run off of that system, and that's the system that they stand by for important whatever. This is what they aired on the New York Sunday Morning, just so my records are jointed properly at conjunction. This morning I did something on Bill Maher. There was something about a sanitation and a ring. I did a piece a long time back talking about cotton bullets. I mean, that's what they look like. But anyhow, that was a product and branding. I think they made a special edition that was the pearl. Whatever. So I'm looking at what they're putting up here. They don't have Jane Pauley on. They have a special newscaster, and they're speaking about the divide in the nation at the moment. It's a special edition, so they claim. And they talk about something called Gallup. I don't know what that is. I've heard of it before. I know it's something that a horse does. They gallop, they trot, they do in the equine community. just so maritime and meridian in whatever. So I'm like looking at this man, and he says that they just took a Gallup poll. No idea who they survey. Really, I don't. I don't know how one gets found by this Gallup. I don't know who runs this Gallup society. I don't know if they're skewing the demographics so this way they get these results. They said clearly that the survey, actually, I'll let them go, but it was a complete reversal. I call it a turnover in this apple that I'm in, the Big Apple. With They used to have the Big Apple Circus here, under the tent that I was, whatever. I'm looking at, and then I'm watching as Oregon and Idaho want to change their state lines. I also, incidentally, speaking of Magellan, I saw that for some reason I made a discovery that South America or Latin America, whatever, all of a sudden on Google is being represented by states, no longer by country. This frightens me, on chemical and endowments and what's going on in the streets that I'm walking on at the moment. I don't know how they gain statehood. Is this going to flood the state system at the State Department? Do they have their own State Department? Is this part of the influx that I'm having a problem with in the north of America? I mean, they are just to the south by Magellan Strait. I mean, does the Bering Strait kids know? I grew up on Sesame Street. I don't know Big Bird personally, but I have a feeling that God can get in touch with Big Bird, like the real one. So I'm watching this, and it makes it sound like this total reversal from the 1950s to where 2022 is. Like, it's just so normal, and like everybody got with the fact, is it okay if blacks and whites get married? Like everybody's on board, we're good. Mm-hmm. Right, okay, well, here's the thing though. You lost the population along the way. So who are you actually polling? That set of data points really is crucial and key before it goes out to mainland public as if it's some kind of new unwritten law that none of us asked for. I mean, like, it's a really shady way to hide an invasion, quite frankly. There's been some real large shifts in population. Not sure where they came from, not sure why. I've been hurt along the way. Again, I always question, I'm like, there's people who come into my field of view and into my physical area throughout my life. And Linda and Lou say, you're nice to everybody. You just, like a Disney princess at the theme park is pretty much how they said to treat every human I ever come in contact with. And I have stayed to that. There's been rare few times, unless somebody comes at me, but I usually don't stay awake very long when that happens. So, it's just my part in provocation and unprovocated attacks, think Disney theme park princess, and not so sweet and sappy that just from a distance, and there are people walking up and down and around her Disney princess self at internal security, DIS. There's a department somewhere that knows what I'm talking about. I don't stare at people. I don't purposely go near people. I don't purposely move away from people. I just do my Disney princess thing, and populations seem to move around me, and it's frightening, but it is whatever it is. So when these type of presentations are put together in realm and real world terms, I don't know what a Gallup poll is. I don't know if they purposely did not include my demographic of, I thought that they had to have some tiers of things, like some go to college, some don't go to college. I mean, like, did they just write off everybody who didn't go to college, who actually wanted to look for husband and family? Like, did we get some raw deal here that I'm unaware of? I mean, they've made my position amongst humanity, like, it's almost like they wrote my story off of possibility. And then they forced upon wanting family and husband and more of a Puritan stance. It feels like they wrote it off where they're not even acknowledging. I mean, it's such a horrific, but it's on so many fronts and so many facets of discrimination against my person, when I've never prejudged someone in a moment. But others I know have taken whatever, and whatever.
Good morning. I'm Ted Koppel, and don't panic, Jane will be back next week. This is a special edition of Sunday Morning in which we ask, are we a nation divided? Is it perhaps time to scrap our national motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one? There's no denying the fact that in recent years we've drifted apart, retreated to our separate corners, hunkered down in our respective silos. And yet, Mr. Gallup's people, the folks who've been polling our opinions for almost as long as most of us can remember, Gallup recently asked U.S. adults whether they approve of marriage between black people and white people. And 94% said, yes, they do. You know what that number was when Gallup first posed the question back in 1958? 4%. Almost a total.
When I see results this substantial, my stomach churns, and I want to know what happened to the people that weren't okay. Is there some hidden civil uprising or some unbeknownst battlefield where bodies are just disappearing like ghost cities, where now all of a sudden unannounced populations are moving in and taking over, and now it becomes like this zombie population that on paper looks one way, but in actuality it's something completely different.
Reversals. So, in the face of all our differences, some things seem to be moving in a more tolerant direction. Even in the worst of times, what always saved us from slipping entirely off the edge has been the American sense of humor, the ability to laugh at ourselves. And 50 years ago, this guy, Archie Bunker, walked the razor's edge into tens of millions of American homes.
You Jats, you Chinamen, you Krauts and you Hebes, and you Lincoln's fans. All come in here, and they're all free to live in their own separate sections. Where they feel safe, and they bust your head if you go in there. That's what makes America great, buddy.
Producer.
What happened to that, like, simple freedom? When did everything have to become adverse and diverse and divergent from apparent inherited neat and tidy standards that someone's responsible for upholding? And what happened to, like, finding a recruiter of, like, I would have participated more had I not been chastised somehow in, like, a castaway situation, because I would have preferred to have been a good wife and a mother than some university college educate.
Norman Lear was the man who created All in the Family and other hit shows like The Jeffersons and Maude. He recently turned 100 and he's still producing and causing controversy. You're going to piss a lot of people off, Norman. You know that.
Oh, wouldn't it be interesting? I am determined to find out.
Of all differences, few have produced more friction over the years than those between black and white Americans, the subject of my conversation with singer-songwriter John Legend.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free.
I feel like black people have been patriotic in this country. We've been forgiving in this country. We've fought for the ideals that the nation said we were founded on. We've done that for centuries. And I think we believed in America more than America believed in us or believed in itself.
And much of America is still struggling. Lee Cowan reports on some Oregon residents.
Now, how does that tie in a paid sponsorship of terrorism? How does that in, like, a Tierra de Fuego? It looks like Fugo, F-U, and then ego after it. Just so Magellan Strait with San Antonio, and the 1975 problem I got going on is all crystal clear. How does that OPEC dollar thing, the petrol doc? Now, is that the Petra kids in, like, some desert far, far away in, like, a Lawrence of Arabia? Does the Bering Straits kids know that, like, the Magellan directionals are off somehow? I mean, inch by inch, I'm trying to figure this out.
Like the progressive policies of their own state. Their solution? Move a big part of Oregon into Idaho.
Our system is set up on a majority rules.
Right.
I'm in agreement with that, but at a particular point when the majority becomes a super majority, then one side is negated.
That's kind of how I feel New York in the, like, well, let's just say it feels like the Manhattan Island and some of the outer boroughs, being BOROS, I having borough Queens, that I'm situated in at the moment. It just feels like this paradox is somehow going on. I mean, like, not necessarily the state lines. I don't know about how any of that works, but it just feels like this turnover that nobody's spoken about. But as we moved here and as my health's been deteriorating even worse than before, I just don't know. I'm thinking, it really comes down to chemical company and chemical count, and then some education and some misappropriating of a whole lot of time.
We are negated here.
From John Dickerson, we'll hear that a divided America may be as old as America itself. Ben Tracy takes us to Wyoming, where the very rich are so rich that the not so rich can barely afford to live there. David Pogue finds out why some of us go off the rails when we go online.
And unless there was some kind of idiom coming through the boob tube, which is what they used to call the television, there is no even connection. Like, I don't know anything about Wyoming. My son's not learning about Wyoming. Not ancestors he might have in a Wyoming. Not in Idaho, not even in Agunda or Iowa. Like, there's no ancestry speak at all in New York. And there's no learning of the state systems, or like there was like a map, like a real whatever map, but that's really it. It's really frightening how stupefied the area schooling has gotten for someone like him. And I don't know an alternate scenario. Like, I don't even know how to traverse. Like, an IEP would be really stellar, but I don't think he qualifies like Benjamin did for special service.
Califasane examines the never-ending disconnect between old and young. Martha Teichner goes in search of common ground, plus commentary from David Sedaris, humor from Jim Gaffigan, and more. This is a special edition of Sunday Morning, and we'll be back after this.
Now, normally they do some kind of motif or some kind of symbol of the sun, being the SUN. Today, they're using this seal of some sort. That's the word I use to describe that, SEAL, which is it's not usual. And then it's October 16th, 2022. And I can see in the reflection of my phone that it's in a reversed position from how it's normally written, almost in a dyslexic format. Just the way that the camera on this particular phone is coded somehow.
Commentary from David Sedaris, humor from Jim Gaffigan, and more. This is a special edition of Sunday Morning, and we'll be back after this.
It says biggest threat to Americans' way of life by registered voters, they asked. Now, they did not ask me. I have not been polled. This particular one says CBS News poll YouGov, YOUGOV, July 2022. It says the biggest threats, they're asking the question. Foreign threats is 9%. Natural world is 14%. Economic forces 35%, and other Americans 42%. Uh-huh.
Gabriel Byrne.
Now, I've heard some kids, they know how to move themselves into different states. On here on the television, they say that this one man moved to this Eagle, I don't know if it's Eagle, Idaho or Eagle, Oregon. I'd have to watch it again. It didn't stick, but um, and like he found this place like where he just fit in, and it was like filled with people just like him, the ideals, the morals, the whatever. And he said it was just really nice feeling to be that welcomed and to feel like you fit in. And I'm like, how do these people find one another? Like, how is it that simple for them? I mean, how do you move I mean, I moved to Virginia, but it was on a wing and a prayer, and then the wing broke, and I was dragged back to New York. And there's like no, I mean, like, there's no, how do you move? If you're in the system, like, how do you find employment? How does employment find you? Like, I mean, are they able to mail you stuff? Like, is there opportunity anywhere?
And if you think that's far-fetched, Lee Cowan invites you to think again.
This is 1863.
Mike McCarthy. He knows his American history
Well, guys, let's go ahead and get started here.
almost as well as he knows his Bible.
Dear Father, we just thank you for this time.
His family has lived and worshiped here in Oregon for 4 generations.
The only time I lived out of the state was during the Vietnam War when I was in the military.
But his Oregon might not be the Oregon you're thinking of. The one with the misty, rugged coastline, Pinot Noir wineries, and its loyally blue politics. Nope, this is the red side of Oregon, the rural and more sparsely populated part. Mike lives in the town of La Pine.
It's almost like the Grand Canyon goes right along the Cascade Range.
It's that big a divide.
It is a big divide.
What that means politically, he says, is the blue part of Western Oregon always outweighs the eastern part's red.
And in talking to a legislator over in the Portland area, I said, the legislature doesn't listen to our people, our representatives over here. He said, whoa, 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 stop, Mike. We hear what they're saying. We just outvote you.
I don't even know how that works, because in New York, they don't even go that far as to teach you how things are working and where they work.
So McCarter decided to look for greener pastures, or in this case, at least ones a little more red.
For me, it's signs when I see how some of the states are functioning and working parts of their systems. It is like blaring, it's like a lighthouse going off so you can see the coastline. I mean, it is just, what a difference when somebody makes a piece like this to then have a comparison and a contrast to just how divergent the area that you're trapped within is in comparison to some of the other places that have functioning pieces that technically there should be something that functions like that here. But I don't know what happened with some kind of swing that made it so I mean, like, does Gallup know how to find people? I mean, Ian found my beeper number that wasn't even published in like 1998. I'm like, I don't know. I told Nicholas, I'm like, I don't know who this is. Like, it's a 212 number. I mean, like, how did they get my number? I didn't give it out. I mean, like, nobody had my beeper number. Like, maybe 3 people. And so he was like, I don't know, call it back. So I did. I'm like, who are you? It was like, ooh, how do people get unregistered numbers? I don't know. But then now I'm thinking to myself, they had the capability back then. So where's this excuse that they're galloping, polling things and people? Who? You know how to find me. Why aren't I being polled?
Red.
This would be Oregon. And that across the 63% of Oregon's land.
So a big chunk.
Big chunk.
When you have a government that won't listen to the opposition or take into account those of us that live out here.
Not saying I'm part of the 1950s version of 4%. It's my personal preference not to have to have that choice put upon me. It was something that was never going to fly. I have a very specific blood type. I have a very specific look. It's like looking in the genetic mirror and seeing the exact same image. That is like my preference. So when that is my stated preference time and time again, when it gets withheld from my reach after being hurt in the field and being discriminated against and not having that level of opportunity, having that withheld from me, there's some real problems in the field of genetics, chemical weaponry, children and family planning. It sounds like something that's probably a parent's inherency related or relatable in however they bring things and honor, they restore honor and valor to themselves, their fleet, their whatever else. In one of the music genres was mentioning a nihilist, but I don't know if there's any other kind of whatever on that.
Then we have no government representation. This town is about 200.
That's Sandy Gilson. She owns a real estate business in rural John Day, Oregon, which is closer to Boise than it is to Portland in virtually every way.
Is it a political difference? Is it a cultural difference?
It's all of the above.
Yeah.
They won't hear our concerns. They don't understand our lifestyle.
Now, she at least has ears she can bend. Faces she knows how to seek out. Their schooling system seems to have upheld and not withheld information so crucial to what they needed to know to survive here during the same time frame that I'm here in New York. I don't know.
She's been going door to door in support of the Greater Idaho movement, and she says she's found some pretty fertile ground. Of the 11 counties that have put it to a vote, 9 have endorsed it, and it's on the ballot in 2 more counties this November. Some who voted against it worry that it could discourage political discourse. It might even set a dangerous precedent for other states.
Again, like they go into these words, it gets wordy. I don't really follow. I don't know the process. It hasn't been constructed theoretically in a manner that is easy to digest and follow along, and then to reconstruct in my own situation or whatever, to try to like help myself. But important parts is Gallup poll. I haven't been offered. I don't know how that gets put together. Now, this is interesting. Bill Maher's going over some stats, and then I'm going to try to find the piece where Tyson DeGrassi goes through his knowledge of nuclear weaponry. And I'm like, now, how is it? Like, if everybody is as dull and sharp edge as I am on nuclear weaponry, how hydrogen works from the outside in chemically and so on and so forth, then it's an even playing field. But when you have scientists who are showing up and there's no representative from my whatever, I can't even say the word camp anymore, based on some of the letdowns that they've let out. I mean, it's just like, where's safe words? Are there any such things as safe words? I mean, again, I'm trying to get my bearings straight, and the Magellan just like so in navigational gear.
To take a different tack on this, I mean, because you have made the point very often, Doc, that you tried to point out how our reactions to threats are very often not rational and not proportional. So I said from the beginning, I thought we overreacted to COVID. Now we're getting some information after a while. We have time to find out just how bad the collateral damage has been. Here's just a few cases. The pandemic erased 2 decades of progress in math and reading. See, right away, I got to say, this pisses me off. I see these headlines all the time. The pandemic didn't do that. The way we handled the pandemic did that. The pandemic certainly was a thing. But let's not just say the pandemic, because it was not written in stone that we had to handle it the way we did.
He said 2 decades. He means we lost 20 years in the time it took to process COVID. Now, who lost 20 years? Is that 20 years they're shaving off of the next gens, their life and their paradigm? It gets confusing when I hear them speak.
ACT scores are the lowest in 30 years. Anxiety and depression way up. The body mass index doubled for kids 2 to 19. Drug overdose deaths. Murders way up. Inflation at a 40-year high. Domestic violence increased. And my favorite, car crashes. They couldn't figure this out. Like way, way, way up. And finally, I love this. This is the expert said. You know what it is? People just went fucking mental. They just went nuts. They're like, I'm home. The fucking kids are here all the time. My stupid husband is here all the time. I'm just going to take it out on the highway. And they did.
There was a group, the Great Barrington Declaration.
Yes.
These academics, and a lot of them are at Hoover, at Stanford. Hoover Institute.
Hoover.
I had them on CNN. I put them on regularly on radio. And there was always enormous blowback because they were saying many of the things that you're saying now, only they were saying it in real time. And
it's the name of the show.
Yeah, what I would add to that is I think one of the great injustices was the rush to judgment as soon as the shit hit the fan to clear out every college campus and grad school. It never made sense to me that we sent them back through airplanes and car rides with relatives.
Now, this is interesting. They're talking about nuclear warfare, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm listening. This man apparently has something called Star Talk. I'm like, oh, wow. And again, level of education, I'm like, I don't have this level of education. It seems like the scales are tipped so far into some really dangerous category that these were obtainable futures for this level of scientist, but yet I couldn't get either what I really wanted or at least some alternative way to care for myself, being a pursuit of science at some level that these people have access to by opportunity or so on and so forth. At so and so.
The death of democracy that's sort of been on my mind this week is nuclear war. So I want to, of course, it's so great that you're here to talk about this satellite. I mentioned it in the model.
Now, I do see how nervous he is when he speaks on this topic. I do see that.
Analog that NASA fired, a 10-month trip, 7 miles, and they bullseyed this asteroid to knock it off its course, which, it was either that or Bruce Willis.
And that's why they call it rocket science. We can do that kind of thing.
And again, in a hybrid paradox, I don't know if are they talking about St. John's on Crescent Street and knocking the Aster from Astoria off her course? Big Bird representative, like the scary kind, showed up, but it seemed to be looking to recruit and represent this. Said I had to figure out a way to get to my like phone call to like the president level. I'm like, I don't know what that means. She said, why don't you ask your father? I'm like, does my father know any of the words you're even speaking? I was like, because I've never heard him speak like whatever it is that you're talking about at home. And she's like, well, why don't we call him in here? I go, okay. But like, I didn't know where he was. I mean, like, does anybody know what they're doing to the children? Just asking. And like, real, like for real, at Realm.
And by the way, we can do that. And by the way, that satellite was launched to be where the asteroid would be when it gets there. So it's not like you go and aim for it. You find a spot where you go.
Okay, shh. I'm doing something.
Dad, get me a short sleeve shirt.
Well, of course, that also a quarterback doesn't throw where the receiver is. He throws where the receiver is.
I just want to make that clear.
Going to be. Yes, very good. Well, that's obvious. Even I knew that.
Okay.
You don't fire the missile where the asteroid was.
Correct.
I get that.
Correct. But rarely is the quarterback moving as fast as the receiver when the ball is thrown.
I'm giving all props to NASA.
Okay. But I think we need to make a bigger deal of this so that people, when they see the success of this mission, they don't turn around and say, well, I don't otherwise trust science. Science does not work for me. Look what it can do. Look what it does do, and has the future survival of our species in its hands.
It's
Mother Hubbard had some nursery rhymes. Mother Fletcher, I found out last week when Angela Lansbury died, was something completely different. Just a Beauty and the Beast and Mrs. Potts.
The problem, as with everything in America, is it's not that people don't believe in science. It's just that they each have their own type of science that they believe in.
Their own personal truths.
Right. I mean, the left loves to say the right doesn't believe in science, and then I see them wearing masks outside. My question was, if we can do that, if we can hit the asteroid, could we do that with nuclear weapons? Because it's getting a little chippy out there with Putin. And I don't, I mean, I love Ukraine, but do I love them enough to get radiated?
But you can't do nothing, right? I mean, if in fact there's a tactical nuke that's used by Putin, obviously there needs to be a response.
Okay.
Well, plus modern nukes don't have the radiation problem, just to be clear.
Really?
You still blow to smithereens, but yeah, it's a different kind of weapon than the here.
Who's his national security rep? Like, really seriously, I want to know. Why does his apparency and inheritancy, if such a thing exists, outside of North America, why is he better, like, equipped for life than my apparency inherency has given to my person? I'm just curious.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Nuclear weapons, if they're exploded, don't have a radiation problem?
Not if there's hydrogen bombs. No. Not in the way that we used to have to worry about with fallout and all the rest of that. What you really have to worry about is being vaporized, and after that, if you're not vaporized, blown to bits by the shockwave. That's a way bigger problem that you're going to have.
I'm not worried about that problem.
You're not worried about that problem.
I'm not. I mean, this is news to me. This is why it's great to have a scientist.
Wait, just to be clear.
No, yes, be clear.
I want to just put on the table.
And I just have to ask, because he seems so knowledgeable. Like, I feel so not nationally secure at the moment, being that I have a trailing 1975 problem off of a 1976 problem, off of a teenage appearance and childhood appearance where things happened that really altered the course of like my life at like severe domestic abuse before there was even like a ring issue at whatever they are considered. Um, so I'm just having a real hard time in why and like who is passing and allowing technology grade weaponry and chemical weaponry to be designed and studied along with nanotechnology. Like, who is allowing him to have in North America a higher level of knowing? I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know if it's like the Magellan area pushing up north in some MESO America. Why are they overeducated in chemical weaponry and in defense tactics and availabilities and possibilities? And why is and where is my nationally secure advisor and person to keep me safe, especially based on where I am at the moment?
Nuclear weapons, their very existence birthed the Cold War and all of the putting the world as holding the world hostage for 60 years, okay, or 50 years it was. That's a travesty in the history of civilization. But what I want to say is there's a reaction to nukes that is a little bit out of proportion with what they actually do.
Great, I want to hear this.
Well, because, for example, okay, we talk about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and you look at the death toll, and it was nuclear weapons, and everyone is reacting. But wait a minute, a few months earlier in Tokyo, we had an overnight firebombing raid that killed more people than the sum of both of those atomic weapons.
And in Dresden.
Okay? And by the way, science.
That's a headline I never even heard. It doesn't hit the stations a lot like a lot of other pieces of information.
Science went into that. If you bomb a circle of fire, then the middle of the circle is hotter than the outside. That rises, air flows in, points all of the fires inward, and you can incinerate an entire area without having to actually blow up the area. So there's a lot of tactical things. But the point is, all I'm saying is, why?
That's a level of intellect reserved for I don't know who.
Why are we specializing focusing our conversation on nukes when there's so many other ways war kills people? And why aren't we paying attention to that?
Okay, I'll tell you why.
You're going to outlaw nukes, outlaw war.
Okay. Well, no one's going to outlaw war.
Well, then to not worry about what's going on now and say, now we're going to worry about the nukes?
Calm down.
Sorry.
Try to decaf. It's vulgar stuff. No. Okay. No, here's why I'm worried.
Yeah.
I wasn't worried that Putin was going to send his entire ICBM arsenal over here and nuke America. If he did, I'd just kiss my ass goodbye. What I was worried about, and a lot of people are worried about, is, and I've heard this about India and Pakistan also, if they exchange their nuclear weapons, that the radiation in the atmosphere would come over here, would go all over the world, even if it was just a local exchange. Now you're telling me that is not a worry?
If they use fission bombs, yes, that would be the case.
Oh, for fuck's sake. What is that what they have or is not? What kind of... All right, I'm just going to move on. You know...
Okay, but one other thing about war, do you know between 1939 and 1945, 1,000 people were killed per hour of every hour between 1939 and 1945 because of the Second World War. Which means in any random 3-day period, more people died from conventional weaponry than who died in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in any 3 days of the entire war.
Not really relevant to what I'm
Okay.
It's just not. I get it. I mean, that's true too. Yeah. But it's not what we're really focusing on now. Is this Ukraine thing where Putin we found out his army is a paper tiger. You know, it's so funny. Like, it's such a roller coaster with Ukraine. First, it was like, oh, he did it. He invaded. Bad. Oh, but we found out his army sucks. Good. Oh, but that means he only has the nukes to use. Bad. You know, I mean, and it is bad when the guy has nothing but the nukes.
I don't know at what level and where they're having this conversation. Like, I get Bill Maher has a TV show and he's got writers and probably a staff of whatever from HBO. But again, like, places I would have gophered or interned or would have been really happy like being a part of, but it is so distal in proximity to like how does one even get there? And now I have this disconnect going on with consistency with blood poisoning. The blood gases are off and whatnot, so it now is like a whole nother thing of I don't even know if I'd make it through a full-time job, quite frankly, as much as I want to have a full-time job. I just don't see a way out of this. I don't know how to get out of this. Really, I don't. It's so frightening. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 1261. And for my pattern of where I am, this is the 50 stars.